and welcome to Psychology 215, Basic Statistical Methods. I'm Matt Andrzejewski, and I'll be your instructor this semester. This lecture should function as an introduction to the class. I'm going to be talking about why we study statistics, how we're going to accomplish the objectives and goals of the class. I'm going to be talking about the materials that we'll use throughout the semester, the textbook, the workbook, the software package. I'm going to be talking about your grade, your assignments, the tests, and so on and so forth. So hopefully at the end of this video, you'll have a pretty good idea of where we're going in this particular class. If you have any questions about the assignments or the tests or the calendar, it's always best to look through the syllabus pretty closely for those answers. Usually they're in there. But if you have questions that are not answered in the syllabus, please drop me an email and we'll clarify those points and hopefully get you on your way. Okay, we study statistics because we want to learn something about the world. Learning about the world helps us guide our decisions, helps us guide our behavior when we are in a situation in which we don't know necessarily the outcome. These could be really super personal questions like, which cell phone should I buy? Or they could be complicated questions like, what are the long-term effects of alcohol abuse? If we want to learn about the world, if we want to answer questions about our world, learning can result from things like critical thinking, sitting down and pondering a question, maybe in a quiet room and jotting some notes down and seeking relations. We could also ask an authority, a supposed expert on the field, or we might even have a religious experience in which we think we come to some conclusion. But it's my contention that collecting data is the surest way to learn about our world, to observe and measure systematically, do a scientific experiment or research. That's the surest way to answer those particular questions. Now, the problem with that is that when we collect data in the behavioral sciences, they're very messy. They look like an incoherent jumble of numbers often. Often we're going to be working in this class with strings of numbers. So statistical procedures are ways in which we make sense of data. Statistical procedures are tools for learning about our world, for answering questions. So, the objectives for this course are going to be related to data and to statistical procedures, obviously, making sense of the world. So we want to develop an understanding of what data represent, utilize methods for summarizing and describing data, develop skills for performing basic data analyses. I want you guys to be able to draw inferences from samples to larger groups at the end of the course, and to conduct statistical analyses on a computer, and lastly, to develop a critical attitude in the reception of statistical information. This course is going to be about working with data, but the questions about where data come from, is whether it's biased, whether it's selective, those are questions that we're going to touch on a little bit. But those are questions that are going to be handled in research methods a little bit more. But I want you to really, this last objective, to develop a critical attitude, is really a recognition that numbers can be manipulated, numbers can be made to look better than they actually are, and we'll talk about some ways to get around those things. In this course, I'm going to be assigning readings. There's going to be PowerPoint lectures. There's going to be PowerPoint demonstrations. We're going to be doing on-the-board practice. There'll be lab exercises. There's going to be lab practice. There's going to be problem sets. I'm going to give you feedback, and we're going to rinse and repeat, or in other words, we're going to do this over and over again. So each section of the course is divided up into a unit. There's an associated reading assignment. I'm going to be lecturing on the high points of that particular reading assignment. Then I'll be doing some demonstrations in PowerPoint on the various methods. Then we'll actually practice. I actually have a whiteboard that I'll be recording videos of me conducting the procedures and doing the various methods on the board. Then you'll be practicing them in like a lab-like format, working through a workbook and doing some practice, and then there'll be problem sets. I'm going to give you feedback on the problem sets and how you're doing, and then we're going to repeat that for the next unit, and the next unit, and the next unit. The reading assignments come from a book that I'm an author on called Learning from Data. And it has detailed explanations and examples and definitions and formulae and practice exercises and a number of tables in the back that are all going to be valuable resources to you. This is where the main content of the course comes from, and I'll be sticking to it very closely. There's also accompanying this is a workbook. This workbook follows very closely with the textbook. The methods in the workbook mirror the methods in the textbook. This is where the on-the-board exercises come from. There are also checklists of various objectives for various units. There's step-by-step Excel instructions. There's numerous examples. There's a number of practice exercises that are different from the book. There's also formulae in there in a much more concise format. And there's also something called a decision tree in there, which we'll be talking about a little bit later in the semester. We are going to be emphasizing using Excel, Microsoft Excel, which is a spreadsheet program for this class. The first unit in your workbook is actually an introduction to Excel, so I'm assuming that you have very limited exposure to Excel. But this is a very, very powerful program. We're going to be doing all the statistical analyses, all the methods and procedures. We're going to be doing this in Excel. I think Excel is a very valuable program not only for statistical analyses but for data analyses, data organization, and management and exploration. On top of it, it's a program that you can do all sorts of things in for your personal life or maybe even your professional life that have nothing to do with statistics. And unfortunately, most people that take this course don't wind up doing research in psychology, so a more advanced program like SPSS, which you might hear about in other courses, isn't going to be really useful for you. But I think Excel will be really useful in any number of contexts. We're also, in this course, going to be working with real data. Believe it or not, we're going to explore two real and interesting data sets. The first one we call the smoking study, and the second one we call the maternity study. The full data sets are available on D2L. There's also accompanying appendices that describe what the data and what the various variables mean. So the smoking study was conducted by Dr. Tim Baker at the University of Wisconsin Center for Tobacco Research and Intervention. This was a study on the most effective ways to stop smoking. It was a smoking cessation study. It's 608 participants, and they provided data on how many times they smoked during the day, what type of cigarette they smoked, when they started smoking, how many years they've been smoking, and so on and so forth. They also took physiological measures that include the carbon monoxide content of their exhaled breath, all sorts of really interesting and neat information. We have the full data set, and we'll be using it and manipulating it, exploring it for that. Doctors Janet Hyde and Marilyn Essex from the Wisconsin Maternity Leave and Health Project also provided us their data set. We call this the maternity study. It was 244 families. They provided data on marital satisfaction, child rearing styles, other household events, jobs, education levels, and so on and so forth. And these two data sets we're going to be using to learn how to do statistics. And real data are really valuable. And the two things that, the two main points about using real data that I want to make are that this is a difficult enterprise. It takes hard work to get a good data set. That's the first point. So I don't want to undervalue how much work goes into getting good data. The second point is that we're going to see some anomalies. We're going to see some odd things. And in the real world, it's not as clean as we'd like it to be, even in a research environment. So hopefully those 2 points will be made during the semester, and we'll look through those. Your grade is going to be based on problem sets and 2 exams. There are 11 problem sets assigned throughout the semester. They're worth 4 points each. The best 10 count. That means that if you've done the first 10 and gotten all 4s on them and don't want to do the 11th, that's fine. That doesn't mean you won't be tested on it. But I always give people um, you know, the benefit of the doubt if you miss one assignment. It's um, you know, some things happen, and the best 10 out of 11 count. There are two exams. They're worth 30 points each. The first both exams have two parts. There'll be computations on small sets of data. That's worth 15 points, and then there'll be terms, definitions, interpretations, etc. That's worth 15 points. At the end of the semester, really all I do is total up all your points. If there are 40 points from problem sets, plus 30 is 100. Your grade will be based on a 100-point scale. It's the scale is listed in the syllabus. Now, the problem sets are a little bit, the policy that I have surrounding the problem sets is a little bit different than most people's. And that is, if at first you don't do it right, you're only going to be, your problem set is only graded when it's done completely correctly. I do this because if you practice a procedure incorrectly, you will probably do it incorrectly on the exam. What you need to do in order to learn these techniques effectively is to perform the technique correctly. So if you don't do something correctly, you're going to have a second chance. Actually, you'll have a third and fourth chance to do it correctly. And that's what I want. I want to emphasize that a problem set is practice, but I want you to practice correctly. My swim coach in high school used to say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So if you head in a problem set and it's not done perfectly, you will be asked to resubmit it. There's 1 point off for each successive try. You can always earn 2 points on a handed-in problem set that's done correctly. Handed-in problem set, other problem sets that are done, you know, sort of half right may earn you a point. But what I really want to emphasize here is I want you to do the homework on time correctly. If you do not do it correctly, I will be grading these things. You'll be submitting them on a Dropbox and D2L. I will be giving you feedback within 2 days on your assignment. And then if you're asked to resubmit it, you'll have until the next Tuesday. Actually, problem sets are due on Tuesday. I'll have them graded by Thursday. If you need to resubmit, you'll have by the next Tuesday to resubmit. You can get 3 points if you on second submission or upon resubmission have it done correctly. So that's what a resubmit means. Again, what I'm trying to do is provide some incentive for you to do it completely, correctly, and on time the first time. Okay, so that gives you an overview of the course, the grades. There's a lot more details in the syllabus online. But what I want to do next is I've made a video about how to use D2L, how I'm going to use D2L in this course, and I'd like you to watch that video for information on how I format D2L to deliver material to the course. So why don't you proceed there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.